What's up, Denver? Chris Lopez here, and today we are talking to a couple that's living out their HGTV dreams while doing a house hack at a duplex in Englewood, Colorado. They're doing lots of DIY renovations. They're in the studio to talk to us about the deal, their plans, and how reality is matching up with those plans. So we got Lauren Valnoti in the studio as well. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me today.
Glad to have you here because I know this deal, we got a few things to talk about, and you did some amazing negotiations on here. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. But to our guests, Alexis and Bryant. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Doing great. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So beyond saying that you guys have got your HGTV dream, I mean, that's the intro, right?
Yeah.
So, Alexis, give us the setup on here for what made you interested in real estate investing, kind of set the story to talk about this duplex.
Sure thing. So it was coming up that we had been living together and we were interested in buying. And I realized I really didn't know anything about the process. And I thought, podcasts, people listen to those in the car on the way to work. I could, double down and just start learning about how real estate works. And so I Googled Denver real estate podcast, and guess what came up?
I know it came up.
So we are longtime listeners, first time appearing on the podcast. We spent probably about 6 months before we first contacted you. Every time we went up to ski to the mountains, we listened to another podcast episode, exchanged a lot of concerned looks at various times when, they talked about how the market was tight, especially through 2020 when inventory was just so low.
Yeah.
But then we got the courage to reach out and contact you all in June. And that's when we both read the book cover to cover and took some notes. And that's how we kicked off the process with you all.
I love it. So I know when we talked, the intent was to do like house hack and nomad, but tell the listeners kind of like what you wanted to, like what's your plan for what you wanted to buy initially?
I think we were always interested in the idea of a duplex, something where we had instant rental income that we could capitalize on because we are in our mid to late 30s. I know you can't tell because we look so good for our age, but we're definitely past the point of really wanting roommates. We like our space clean. Yep. And so we did feel like we missed the boat a little bit. Some of the podcast episodes where you've talked to younger couples who take on roommates, and we felt like we missed the boat a little bit on that. So that's why the nomad approach seemed more appealing. Yeah.
And what's the long-term goal? You guys have professional careers. Yep. What's the long-term goal with real estate?
I mean, we want that, $10,000 a month, income coming in. I mean, that sounds exciting. Again, like she said, listening to some of these podcasts especially these young kids that are, in their late to early 20s that are, talking about retiring at 40 and 50. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we love to travel. We're not people who like material things, for the most part, besides wine, good wine. But, I think for us, it's having something that is, relatively smooth, and it's kind of like a locomotive train. It snowballs, and you keep that awesome income coming in, and I think that was really appealing to us. Yeah.
All right. So I want to fast forward to actually talking about the duplex because it's a great deal, great location. I know you guys are doing some work on there, so we got lots to talk about. So we're going to start plugging numbers in the spreadsheet. So we'll share that in the screen, and we'll also put this in the notes as well, or the show notes as well. But we'll tell the story of the duplex through the spreadsheet. So we talk numbers, a little story on there as well. So Lauren, I know they had, they gotten pre-approved, did some high-level strategy stuff. They started working with you, and this was, I think, back in July-ish time frame or so? Yeah. You guys started hunting, do you remember like the first property you guys walked at, kind of story leading up to this duplex?
Well, this is an interesting part of the story. This was the first and only property that they looked at. And so, of course, that gave them a little bit of anxiety of, are we being crazy putting in an offer on the first property? But you and I, we were able to jump on a call with them and just reassure them, we look at a lot of properties, the numbers looked great, focus on the spreadsheet, you coach them, what are the red flags? And the only red flag was
us.
It was the very, very first property.
Yeah.
We were the red
once
flag.
we were able to get through that hurdle, they were able to progress forward and just reassured them too of how the Colorado real estate contract is super buyer friendly. So, we were able to do all of our homework and get them to progress forward. So first property.
We refer to it in the book as your first date.
Yeah.
So this was our first date property.
Yeah. So we got married right away, I guess.
But it's worked out.
Yeah.
But it's what Lauren alluded to. I mean, this happens probably about like 2 or 3 times a year where we're like, hey, this is the first date. They're like, oh, this is a great property. Like, no pressure, but if you guys are going to take this, let me know because we're going to call someone else right now. Because it's not like a sales tactic. It's just it's a good property. But as Lauren alluded to, we have the buyer-friendly contract, so that's why you feel confident. Hey, let's do it.
Definitely.
Do due diligence. You'll spend a week or two, maybe about $1,000 in some inspection costs, everything like that. But it's worth it's worth the calculated risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this first date property, which you now live in and you own, it's in Englewood, right?
Yep.
All right. So it's a duplex. So tell us what the list price was, if you remember.
$575.
$575.
It was originally $525.
Yeah, that's
went under
right.
contract, but they went under contract with the first buyer at over $600.
Yep.
And the financing fell out at the very last second. So when they brought it back to the market, they put it at $575. They did a price increase on it, and we were able to go in and get it $5K over at $580.
$580.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was you guys went at $580. What was the rough acquisition cost? Like $6,000 or so? Okay.
Yep.
We'll just ballpark it like 1% works close enough.
Exactly.
Now, I know there's some stories around negotiation seller credits.
Thank you, Lauren.
So, Lauren, tell us what happened here.
The house was overall in great shape, but there was some deferred maintenance that had been kind of kicked down the road. So, between the three of us, we were able to put together a pretty good strategy. And the buyer was a hardcore businessman. I think he owned like a couple motorcycle.
The buyer or the seller?
I'm sorry, the seller. Yeah. So, he was definitely a hard negotiator on the other side. And plus two, after they had just gotten their hearts broken of being under contract for 35K more, we came in with some pretty heavy hitters. We asked for like 25K in seller concessions. So it was definitely some back and forth. But at the end of the day, we knew that these guys wanted to offload the property. They wanted to sell. And the roof had some issues. We had some structural issues on the interior retaining wall. Sewer line needed some repairs, and we just kind of hit them with the biggest ticket items. So we were able to negotiate a 20K credit. In a roundabout way, we were able to apply $6,000 worth of credits, and then they got a brand new roof, about $14,000 roof repair as well. So
let's talk about that for a second, because the credits, is money that they got the closing table, which means it's less money they have to bring down. But the credits can't go towards your down payment; it has to go towards closing cost or vendor cost. And $20,000 is a large amount, and usually too much to use for closing costs and buying down the interest rate. So you took a big chunk on that, and were able to use that escrow the money for the roofer, right?
correct.
Okay. So basically, what that means is that when they close, part of the money gets set aside for the roofer, and when the roofer does the work, they get paid out of the money. But you guys don't have to bring additional money down or put $20,000 towards buying the interest rate down.
Yeah, it was great. We were very thankful for Lauren. She definitely had to talk me for sure off a cliff because I was ready to walk. I was. They came back at 5K, and I was. It was insulting, and well, and I mean, especially because what we had said and what Lauren had said to them is that look, like we're not probably going to get our FHA approval with the roof in the condition it's in. I mean, I think our inspector said it was like 75%,
80% hail damage.
So that was a big concern, for us. Lauren's a good negotiator, man.
Oh. Yeah, I thought we were pushing our luck and trying her patience. And I was under the naive impression that I was truly willing to walk. I at that day, because we had extended the closing or the inspection of resolution deadline, or we had extended some deadline to continue negotiating. And I was under the naive impression that I was willing to walk and whatever, we'll just take the next one, deals come like a bus. The next one's going to come around any other time. And then honestly, after we got over that hurdle, I started continued looking at all the postings that were coming up. And I thought, boy, I would have really eaten my words if we had fallen through because, nothing was as appealing as what we think we got.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, though, I mean, like, we're not talking a couple dollars. I mean, $20,000 is $1,000. Hey, guys, suck it up. Don't worry about $20,000. Yeah. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's a good attitude to have too, of knowing that you're willing to walk if the numbers don't make sense. It really helps me negotiate because it's a whole different level of negotiations whenever you're like, look, Lauren, we want to shoot for the, stars here, but we really want the house, so it can make it a little more difficult. So whenever it's knowing that you're willing to walk, it's a lot easier to play hardball and just lay it out on the table for the seller and for them to make that choice if they want to move forward or not. So,
all right. So we have 20,000 seller credits.
Yay.
Initial repair costs. I know about 14,000 went to the roof, right? Mm-hmm. What other repair costs would you lump into there that needed to be done?
I mean, we've made a lot of voluntary choices. I wouldn't say we've done much of anything that needed to be done. We've done cosmetic upgrades. So we did a whole new IKEA kitchen. We ripped out all the flooring, got rid of some carpet and replaced it with vinyl plank flooring. So we're about 5,000 in at this point.
So a lot of... You're DIYing it, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, some, when it gets to a point where it's like, okay, like this is the, I've gone down the YouTube rabbit hole of, all the DIY stuff. And I just don't feel confident moving forward. That's when we brought in.
Yep.
Plumber, electrician.
I say those are two things. Don't DIY is electrical and plumbing. Those are my rules of thumb.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
DIY, painting, drywall, whatever.
Totally.
I've heard horror stories of people flooding a unit, and I got electrocuted once. So those are my two lessons.
Yeah. No, we call it LV's peeps,
We call them LVPs.
Wait,
so
what?
Lauren Valinotti, we refer to her as LV. We haven't shared this with her yet. But we're always like, what would LV do? Hey, have you talked to LV?
I feel like that's like, you got to get a bracelet now. What would LV do? This is awesome.
And then we call them LVPs, LV's peeps, but it sounds like MVP because that's what we feel like when we work with Lauren Valinotti.
That's true.
Oh, you guys are awesome. All right. So we'll say 14,000 plus 5,000. I know there's some other stuff because you guys are living in Unit A and Unit B. We'll talk about in a few minutes.
Correct.
Financing, though. This is a duplex. So FHA, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
So 3.5% down. I'm assuming is what you guys did.
Yep.
yes.
3.5% down. And so all in when cash to close was about $17,000, $18,000, $20,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to put back in that right there. Keep the initial repair cost in there. And then what was your interest rate?
2.5.
Yay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't complain about that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how we are going to do, or the rents on here. Because what's the layout of the building?
So unit B they're both 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Unit A, definitely more square footage than unit B. The bedrooms are bigger in A, but I can't remember what the total is.
B has the attached 2-car garage as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Which is important.
they both have different things going for them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, both 2-bedroom, 1-bath, central air, and laundry.
Side by side or up down?
Side by side.
Side by side, each have their own laundry room?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And so which unit are you guys living in?
B.
So that's the slightly smaller one, but has a garage.
Yeah. And for us, we're a couple, we feel like it's too much space for us. And again, the rental potential, I feel like is bigger in A.
All right.
Where, two people can live there, very comfortably. And again, two separate living spaces, I feel like that's a great potential for, someone who may not know the other person living there.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys live in the unit B. That was the unoccupied one. I know unit A had a legacy tenant whose lease ends around the end of the year, end of 2021, right?
Yep.
So what's the operational plan? You move into unit A, and that's the ones we're doing the renovations in. Kind of walk through the plan here.
So initially we had, we were very lucky that the tenant in B, he was in the process of buying a house himself. And so, had motivation to leave early.
End of September.
Yeah, end of September. So we had, we were renting through the end of October in our own place. So we had a full month to really, renovate, which we thought would be plenty of time. So planned on renovating B and then moving to A and then renovating that. That plan has kind of changed mostly because I think there's less to do. Hopefully.
In unit A, there's less to do.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, again, I think the rental potential there is higher initially. The plan is they'll be out at the end of the year. We'll spend January kind of doing, minor projects, knock on wood, and then, rent it out thereafter.
All right. And what are you expecting the rents to be?
So when we were, doing the analysis before we even looked at this place and then through the contract process with Lauren, she had consulted a property manager and came up with $1,850 for each unit. As we're sitting here today and have gotten to catch up with LV, she said, market rates are trending up. We've been watching Zillow and seen several similar units in the neighborhood going for $1,995. So we're hoping we could be around the 2,000 mark for each unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the rent increases this year have been bonkers, like the price appreciation. I think on average, like 13% up for the year.
Wow.
I mean, it's a double digit amount. So we've seen some big increases on rent. So I would definitely try to push those rents. And hey, worst case, they're out there for a weekend.
That's right.
Or for a week.
That's
no
right.
bites, drop it.
Exactly.
So 2,000. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you could get that at all. So we're talking $4,000 a month income once you move out. Because again, you guys bought a future rental. I mean, vacancy, we normally run at 5%. Mm-hmm. I think it'll probably be lower than that just because it's such a good area and, it's a good time to be a landlord. But we'll leave it at 5% to be very conservative. We'll leave rent increases, price appreciations at 3% because it doesn't really matter for year one. Property management. You're self-managing now while you're living there.
Yep.
When you move out in next year to move on to number 2, self-manage, property management, or TBD?
TBD. I think it's certainly going to depend on where our next purchase is. Yeah. If we, land in the same neighborhood that you can be available, as needed, that would be one thing. If we end up all the way across town, that's definitely something that would, factor in favor of bringing in a management company.
How much do you guys enjoy it, and how much time do you think it'll take you to manage? Like, is it more important to be hands-on for you, or is it more important to have as much cash flow, or would you rather be less hands-off?
I think we would prioritize cash flow. I think this has also been a really great learning opportunity to inherit tenants. Yes, there are drawbacks, and we came in with a legacy lease, and we didn't get the opportunity to interview these tenants or meet them in advance. But then we've also been working with a lease agreement that we didn't write, and so we've learned so much, even just in the last couple months of being landlords, that we feel now we're going to be more prepared to make sure that our next lease that we're going to sign with new tenants has the terms we want. So one of the things we need to establish is boundaries, and what time is an acceptable time to send a text message or make a request, because I think there's always even a silent expectation of response time. And so, okay, even if the tenant doesn't necessarily expect you to drop everything you're doing and fix a problem, it kind of starts the clock running. And so I think, establishing boundaries of, if you're going to contact us after, say, 7 p.m., it better be for an emergency basis. Otherwise, please wait till, business hours the next day, even if it's a weekend. But we've already learned with, the 9 p.m. text messages about the garbage disposal needing troubleshooting that you can do on YouTube via Google on YouTube within 5 minutes is something we want to establish in the future.
Also, we're lucky too that the property is almost zero scape. It's a lot of there's really no lawn, for better or worse. But from a maintenance standpoint, it makes it a lot easier. There's some bushes to trim and stuff, but overall, it's a really low maintenance house, which is great in that regard. Yeah.
So. You guys might want to get her like a Google Voice phone number, or one of those Google Voice is free to. I've used that for years for all sorts of stuff, more for business stuff. I don't self-manage properties. But what you can do with Google Voice is it can sync to your cell phone, and you can have it text messages, get phone calls, but you can set up hours in there. And you can say, hey, between hours 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., forward it to my phone.
Right.
If not, have this, out of office reply, and you can do hey, great, we got this. We'll respond to it in the morning. If it's emergency, either call 911 or text this to us so we know.
Sure.
So using that can be great, would help set some boundaries.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, especially since you guys have needier tenants right now, make notes of stuff they're saying. And if it's hey, the garbage disposal, this or that, then when they move out, spend 5 minutes, take photos, put out a manual, and say, hey, cool, here's a couple of common issues we have with this property. Idea. If the garbage disposal goes out, here's the tool. That's a great idea. This, and you can self-educate tenants as well.
No, that's a great idea. Yeah.
See, we knew we should have called you sooner. We spent all these last few months so stressed out. Yeah. Google Voice.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll say that's we need to get hooked up with Jeff sooner to get to those details. So we'll get that done ASAP. So he'll be great at helping you guys get the rental set up on there. All right. So $2,000 a month in rent. I'm going to say property management, no, because based on what you're saying and your eagerness, I would say, hey, self-manage.
Yeah, we'll see.
Monthly reserves, 8%. You good with that?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Taxes.
That was $1,840.
$1,840. Insurance.
$1,800 for that.
All right. And I think you guys, this is a good point to highlight to talk to a few insurance agents. I think you're one you've been working with. You'd gotten a very, very high quote, it sounded like.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It also was interesting, I think, because we had spoken with a broker as well. And there was some confusion in the process. We had to explain what we were doing. And I think there was at least one agent that was kind of concerned that our closing date was not our move-in date, because we knew we were, because the property was fully occupied with tenants, but one was month to month, and we could get him out within the first month and so be owner occupied within 60 days as required. But that kind of threw some of our research off in obtaining quotes, because at least one said, well, you need to start off with a landlord's policy and then we'll transition you to homeowner's insurance. And so I think it just, the lesson we learned is to just ask questions as much as you can, get to the bottom of things and make sure you're being understood so that you know that you're covered, and that there's not you don't find out later on when there's a claim that you didn't get the right coverage you needed.
Yeah.
All right. So we got the insurance locked in. Great tips. How are this utilities on this property? What is it?
So each unit has its own panel and its own meter, and each tenant pays Excel directly for their gas and electric. I'm smiling because when we moved in, we discovered that the units were not equally divided between the panels.
Yeah.
So for we apologize, but it was out of our control. For anyone who previously lived at that address, you may have been paying for your neighbor's electricity usage.
Have you gotten that resolved?
We have gotten it resolved.
Yeah.
Did you call Excel or did you just
No, it was just like the Unit B's refrigerator was on Unit A's panel. So Unit A was paying to power Unit B's fridge.
Yeah. And
which is a huge, that's a big energy suck.
Yeah.
And it was because, originally it was one house. And so they basically put up a wall, added an addition onto B, to make it a separate unit, but then very lazily they put a new panel in, but didn't move everything over. It was all DIY and probably like a buddy, we're assuming. Just, based on the things we've found.
Yeah. So that's great. So 0 electric and gas to you guys. Water, I'm assuming 1 water tap?
Correct.
Okay. And so is the landlord, you guys paying that?
So the lease we inherited, the landlord was actually collecting a separate utilities payment every month. And so each unit was paying $75 for water, sewer, and trash. And so we are currently paying it directly, but with that money was there to subsidize that.
What do you think the annual water bill? Because you're zero-scaped, so you don't have, irrigation can be a big part of the water bill. Do you have an estimate for what it'll be for the year?
I think 600 is probably a good one to go with.
Wow. All right. Trash? I don't know, $400 a year, $500 a year?
$240. I got a coupon code through Waste Management.
All right. And then since we talked utilities here, in this 2,000 rent up here, you're going to add on some utility bill back as well?
I think so. I kind of like the model of having that utilities payment because I think tenants, they see that as fair. I know when I was a renter, I thought, oh, that's fair, to chip in for utilities. And there may be an advantage to getting the actual, list rental price under the 2,000 mark. So you're capturing people who are looking for up to 2,000 and then have that separate utilities payment basically included in the rent, but not. So
you're exactly right. Like it's a psychological thing where, hey, $21 in rent. Oh, that's a lot. Oh, $2,000, $100 in utilities. Right. It's a different perspective.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bump up the rent here just to, we'll say $20.75 each.
That looks great.
Since we're paying for utilities down here, we'll bump up that a little bit. Landscaping, I know you said it's like you guys will have to probably trim some bushes once a year.
Yeah.
What about snow removal? Because that is something that
if it ever snows again, no. I think again, I think we're taking the approach of like, I'm happy to do that. I have a sales job. And so, I'm driving around, actually in that area a lot. So I'm hoping that, I can take an hour out of my day to go do that. We'll see how that goes. Again, I'm with Alexis that it depends on where our next property is, a little bit. We're going to try it. At least now.
What do you see mostly? Do you see that writing that into the lease is the tenant's responsibility?
A lot of it depends on the landlord and how the property is laid out. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes for up-down duplexes can be hard to like, hey, this tenant's responsible. If they're not, it's still impacting like the other tenants, walkway, and that can be a liability on you guys.
Yep.
If it's more of like side by side and separate entrances, and it's like, hey, you're responsible for this sidewalk. You're responsible for this sidewalk. It can be a lot more clear that way. I would just keep in mind, just, try to minimize the liability as much as possible. Like, don't worry about a couple $100 if you can avoid, a slip and fall.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I would say, if you want to, we can throw like $500 a year in there, which is going to be plenty.
Yeah.
Sure.
I got my fourplex. I'll spend in normal years, $500, $800 in snow removal. And that's 4 units, a couple sidewalks, a driveway, and it's $75, $100 of snow removal.
Okay.
And you should probably be way less than that.
Sure.
But just to I would budget some in there because at some point, you're going to be doing and you'll be driving over there as well. Any other utilities or expenses we need to talk about?
No, I think we'll leave internet and cable up to the tenants.
Yeah.
All right. LV, you good with that?
Oh,
All
that's
right. I like the new nickname.
Yeah, we didn't tell her, so this, it's great.
She's in our phones as LV. We tell you.
This is awesome. All right. So you're going to be all in. We're estimating about $40,000 between down payment, the roof that the sellers paid for indirectly. You guys are doing some DIYing stuff, but you'll be dropping money in there. So $40,000 all in over the next 12 months. Total rental income with utilities just under $50,000. Take out all the expenses, and you'll have a mortgage payment of about $26,000 a year. This is not calculating the mortgage insurance. Oh, I got the wrong field selected into here. Do you remember what your mortgage insurance is every month approximately? I'm just curious.
I think I'm under the impression everything's included in that 25 or 29.75 payment.
Yep. So you said about $25.79.
Yeah.
So about $200 a month.
$29.75.
$29 for insurance taxes. Mm-hmm. You're probably around $200 a month.
Okay.
That should be close enough for just some very ballpark math. So here's where it gets cool.
Yeah.
Cash flow. While you're self-managing, and we have the mortgage insurance estimated in there, about $9,500 a year once you move out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my reaction. It's better than we knew. We had done the spreadsheet before we even did the walkthrough, our first date with LV, and then I was updating my spreadsheet as we went through the process, and we're just learning more information as we went along. We got that homeowners insurance quote, but it never even ever looked this good.
Yeah.
So this is
exciting.
Excellent.
So we're estimating about a 23.3% cash on cash return and a 6.4% cap rate. So great numbers. And just as a note here, like when we say cash on cash, we're including that $40,000.
Sure.
Like we're not just saying your down payment. We're saying your down payment plus the money you have to invest to put into the property to get these rents.
That's the most exciting part about these numbers to me.
But overall, your overall return is going to be triple digit. 109%. Is the estimated first year return on Quadrant. Give or take a little bit, since depreciation will be a little bit different since you're living in half the unit.
Sure.
But overall, just an amazing return on your capital. And a big part is because it's a great property you guys found, and also just the power of leverage.
Yeah.
So I want to come back here. Let's say rents are a little bit lower. I'm just going to drop it by $200 total. And let's say you pay for property management. Let's go kind of conservative and 10%. You're still going to cash flow about $3,000 a year.
Yeah.
So, I like to look at kind of like the, kind of set some guardrails.
Absolutely.
Because are you going to make that $9,408 in year one? Absolutely not.
Right.
Hopefully you're around there.
Of course.
But that's a ballpark. But hey, if you do have to move across town, you're like, oh my gosh, I hate property management, which is my experience after 1 year of doing it. You might be like, hey, you know what? We have the luxury where we can afford it, but still pay the bills. And that comes down to your guys' call of preference. But this buys you options.
Yeah. And this is the great part about this spreadsheet, I think, and I think it's what drew us to this process is, the conservative numbers. I think it's the way to look at it. I think it's easy to get enamored by big numbers and this is what we can get. But I think being realistic is a better approach and being conservative. But even at those numbers, it's great to see. It really is. I don't think when we ran the numbers initially, I think we were in the negative by just a little bit, I believe.
Yeah. At least for the first year, but still seeing then, the long-term value.
The long-term is just insane.
And let's do that. Let's go out here and we're going to change just while you're living there, drop one of the rents, drop property management. And you're going to be living for about $1,000 a month. Does that sound about right?
Heck yeah.
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 Was that cheaper than your rent 6 months ago?
Yes.
Oh, for sure. We were paying $1,600 for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys got anything else on the spreadsheet?
No.
Okay. I think this is a great property, great number. So great job, Lauren. Congratulations, guys.
Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were two other things I wanted to chat about because looking at long-term plans here, what is your plans for the next property, kind of the next, monopoly pieces to your rental empire? What are your thoughts?
Well, we know we want to move on and continue to build our portfolio. We're confident that the nomad approach fits us. And we're hoping in, mid 2022 next year to be, looking at properties. I think one of the things we're a little nervous about is that, we got the FHA loan in both of our names. So that's tied up. We can't do another FHA loan. So 3.5% down on a duplex at almost $600,000 was huge. And so I think we're kind of nervous we're not going to get anywhere near as good of a deal. But hey, that's your challenge, right?
I'm on
Help us find it.
Well, what happens a lot of times, because it's very good that you guys are thinking strategically, because financing, is such an underappreciated aspect of buying a property and just building your portfolio. And yeah, you can have one FHA loan at a time. And so when you move out for next year, it will most likely not make sense to refinance out of this 2.5%.
Right. Yeah, I don't
why touch that for a while, because you will not beat those terms and rates. But then what our clients do is they'll do the 5% down conventional. You can use those all day long. And if you want to go more like where you do want a house hack and reduce your income, we find a lot of great properties that have like the mother-in-law suites or ADUs or income suites in there, where actually you can get some similar numbers to this type of property. So it's, again, if you want, tenant on site, or Airbnb or whatever, it's like you can get similar numbers, similar setup as well, but through a single family.
I think we're open to all those options. I think we're in a really unique situation that I think, her and I have said many times, we could live anywhere, for a year, it makes it very easy. We don't have a lot of things tying us down at the moment. So I think that opens it up to a lot of things. We've had a lot of friends that before we started this process were just like, oh my gosh, it's a nightmare. We put down,
20 offers.
Yeah, several, 20 offers and, got out cash bid every time. And, so I think that was part of our apprehension too, is, literally our first date, we're, closing and we're like, is this easy? It can't be. There's got to be, there's something really wrong with this property. And
it's because your team and LV especially had pointed out how favorable, buyer favorable the Colorado real estate forms are, and how you have so many opportunities to back out that in some ways I almost feel like I was going along in the process not really thinking like it was ever going to happen. Like, oh, well, we have more opportunities to get out. Like, let's just go with it for now. And then all of a sudden closing day is here and we made it to the finish line and here we are. And okay, we're homeowners now. But I think that really is what makes the process so much more less scary than we had thought. And I didn't think I was ready. And just listening to the podcast convinced me otherwise. And then going through the process with your team certainly convinced us otherwise and makes us wish we had started sooner.
A lot sooner.
One thing to set the expectations is when you do buy property number 2, you will probably look at more than one property and may put it more than one offer in. So
I hope so.
we'll readjust the expectations there.
No, I hope so. No, and again,
shouldn't be 20 offers, but it might be more than one and more than one property.
No, and I think we've learned so much. I do feel like we kind of found a diamond in the rough, and I think it would be naive of us to think that that's going to happen again. But we'll see. I don't know.
We were also pretty, in some ways, confident and prepared. So we had said when we first started listening to the podcast back at the end of 2020, early 2021, we had said, we had conversations. We're not ready to pick up the phone. We're not ready to call them. We need to do more homework. Yep. We need to, start investigating what kind of mortgage could we afford? What do we want to pay? And so we knew, our lease isn't up till October 2021. We're not ready yet, but we want to get ourselves to the point that when we're ready, we are ready to go. Yep. Like there's nothing that's not taken care of that we have to work through. And I think we got ourselves to that point, before we called you. And so when we did that first date initial walk, we were in a position where we knew we've run the numbers. Mm-hmm. We're confident we can afford this. And so we can press forward without feeling like, we still have all these question marks that are open-ended out there.
Yeah.
Cool. So we have a lot of people who are, a couple steps behind you looking to buy their first property, their first house hack. What advice would you share with them thinking back, 6 months, 12 months ago as you guys were starting the process? Any advice or tips you give other listeners and future investors out there?
I think the decision to purchase and your financial wherewithal is a more complicated and complex decision than you might think. You might think you're capable. I thought I was capable of, I know how much money I make. I know what my finances are. I know what my student loan debt is, which in the past has been astronomical at times. But I really wish I would have talked to a financial planner or, an investment team who has the experience to say, no, you don't need 20% down. There are other financing options available, because I financially was ready a lot sooner than I thought I was. So,
and you were expecting 20% down?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's...
I don't know why that myth is out there of LV. It drives me nuts.
Everybody's trying to educate and push it out there as much as possible. Because 20% down is a very big difference than 5% down.
Yeah. Well, and like the horror stories you hear about the Denver market, as Bryant mentioned, the friends that are on offer number 21 and they're getting rejected. And I wonder, I really do start to wonder. So a change in perspective. Back then, I believed these, and there's no reason to think that they're tall tales, but boy, I thought it was just cutthroat, die hard. The Denver market is terrible. It's full of sharks and you're never going to win. And then once we've read the book and started listening to the podcast, we realized there's probably a lot of realtors out there, perhaps representing some of our friends, that aren't strategic and don't understand the market and, what you all preach, which is you have to make your offer desirable, something that a seller, wants to take or consider seriously. And so I wonder how many of those horror stories come out of just maybe a realtor and their buyers not syncing up right as far as, being strategic or knowing what works in this market. And so that was also a revelation that I learned and that I wish I had learned sooner, is thinking, this market is too cutthroat. We'll never make it. Because if you're with an experienced team that knows what they're doing, you might walk into your first walkthrough and come out closing on that property.
You got any tips, Bryant?
I just think start now. Don't wait. I said it to both of you guys many times, is I wish I would have done this in my 20s. I lived up in the mountains and I could have been renting to my friends, and I would still have that beautiful ski chalet to, whisk Alexis away to. Start, don't wait, don't hesitate. It's only costing you. I've been interested in the stock market and all that stuff for several years, but this is just looking at those numbers, you're like, this is way better than any return you're ever going to see in the stock market. This is the best investment opportunity you can have, and it's how you get to your perfect life, where it's hopefully that's the goal, right?
I agree. One last question for you guys, because I'm in planning mode for a 2022 investing strategies book. Are you guys planning on writing a chapter for the 2022 edition?
Oh, I'm all about it. Please.
All right.
Bryant's not even a good speller. This is all going to fall on me.
It's a team effort, right?
Yes.
There's spell check. Come on.
Yeah. We have an editor read it all.
You'll have to double check his math too.
Yeah. No, but seriously, please write a chapter, guys. I know some people I don't have experience to share. You absolutely do. Even though you're on the earlier part of your journey, there's a lot of people who are quite a few steps behind you, and they can learn from you. So please share it for those people. And also it's the ultimate accountability tool for you guys as well.
Yeah, no, I love it. Again, that's what drew us to this, is just hearing all these different stories of, like I said, this, I can't remember the young couple's name, but that was the podcast that was wow, this is
oh, really?
This is so powerful.
They might have been from Austin, Texas. Yeah. They were recently married, or they were engaged, and it was like a friend, all the roommates that they collected for their house hack was
it was Walker and Nina, I think is probably what they're talking about, right? Was it their
I think so, yeah.
that sounds like their story.
Lined up where a friend of theirs was moving out from Texas, that she had been, it was her sorority sister or something. Yeah. And again, it was, they're thinking about retiring at 45. It's just holy cow, that is the dream, man. like, good for them. And I mean, you know, obviously their stars certainly aligned, especially with their first property.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was, again, the struggle, I think, for us is like, oh gosh, renting room to room. It's just not in the cards for us.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it's a different phase in your life. As
yeah, no, absolutely. And we actually just last week were talking a bunch about, before we decided to settle into staying in B, moving to A, and then renting to like, you know, a traveling nurse. And Alexis was really, you know, kind of on board with that. And I was too, as far as the numbers, but I also was like, well, then you're signing yourself up for living with someone that you don't know, you know, and are you prepared for that? You know, she's lived alone besides 1 year, and that was with a good friend, and that actually turned sour. And I think that was where I came in and said, you know, are you prepared to, you know, go through that with someone that you don't know? And, you know, a nurse has very weird hours, and, you know, there's going to be a Tuesday night where they have off, you know, that they're going to want to have friends over and they're allowed, but like, are you going to want to come home from work and like deal with that? You know, and I think that's kind of what changed our attitude just a little bit.
Yeah. And those are great questions to like ask yourself and ask each other, just to, you know, to merge, hey, the spreadsheet.
Right.
But you also have to live in the property for a year or two, and let's not be miserable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the great thing about having the nomad strategy versus house hacking, because there are a lot of options and you can pick what suits you. And I think it's important to have the conversations and be on the same page, because throughout this process, I think Bryant and I have gotten into one argument in like 3 months of DIY renovations, which I'd say is pretty good.
That's a really good scoreboard.
Yeah. I think it's all because we know what our goal is, and we established from the beginning, like, yes, you know, this place was to a certain extent move-in ready. It could have easily been rented as is, but we decided, you know, let's clean it up cosmetically. Let's put some sweat equity and time and a little bit of money into this, because we don't want, you know, necessarily just any tenant who's willing to pay, say, $1,800. We want a tenant who's willing to pay $2,000 and, you know, is going to go for the new IKEA kitchen and appreciate those modern touches, and just, you know, kind of give ourselves the added insurance of, you know, getting to the higher end of the rental.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'd also, I think, another kind of mantra we had is, you know, that we want a space that someone feels comfortable coming home to. It's what I would want. And it's that struggle, though, of, okay, how, you know, what's something that's a little too much what I want, you know, it's a rental, you know, kind of skirting that line just a little bit.
That was been in it. So the rental versus owner mindset was so easy when we first started looking, because it's so easy to walk into the place and see duplex, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, both sides, you know, laundry in each side, central air, like, doesn't really matter what else is going on in this place, because I know that from a rental perspective, that's great. Where we've lost a little touch with that is through the renovation process, because it's hard, especially being a perfectionist, kind of type A, to, well, okay, I kind of messed up this paint job. I'm not going to not go back and fix it. But at the end of the day, is the renter going to care that I kind of missed a spot on the ceiling, or is that really about me? So it's hard to always maintain the perspective, but I think at those important milestones of when you're looking at properties, when you're going under contract, when you're making decisions about, you know, the big picture scope of whatever, you know, project you might be considering, that's the time to keep those, you know, that perspective, and then we'll let the little things slide as we go along.
Well, and also too, you know, when you have stuff that's, you know, newer and a little bit more put together, I feel like it makes a renter want to respect it more. You know, whereas if it's, you know, it's old kitchen cabinets and one of them doesn't close properly, you know, whatever, I feel like you as a renter, someone can just be like, well, what does it matter? I don't need to take care of this. You know, and again, it's curbing that, like, okay, we're not going to put granite in, you know, as much as we want to, and it looks nice, you know, laminate, it sounds cheap, but what we've done, you know, is it's turned out great. And so, you know, we've been really happy with it, and it's going to be long term for maintaining better than granite.
Yeah, and I mean, you're all in for $5,000 or so on unit A that you're living in, or whatever unit you're living in. So bottom line is, I think you're doing a good job on balancing the two. You didn't spend $25,000 doing the kitchen. Right. You might be something differently.
Yeah.
Hey guys, don't do that. Give you a little love smack, to wake you out of that.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're in there, I think you're on the right track. So
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will.
For all your help.
And we will have you back on to talk about number 2 next year.
I love it.
And see your chapter in the 2022 book.
Love it.
So I know you guys gave us an email address in the show notes. We'll put the link in there so people can network with you.
Great.
We always are big fans of facilitating networking with this podcast.
Absolutely.
So, listeners out there, if you resonate with Alexis and Bryant, reach out to them. Show notes are in there. If you can't find it, email me or Lauren and we'll get you in touch.
Cool.
So guys, thank you. And Lauren, awesome job.
Thank you guys.
Thanks,
Thank
LV.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyone out there has any questions or comments, always reach out. We're always happy to chat and help you out. Have a great one, everyone.